If you have followed my channel for any amount of time, you will probably have noticed by now that I tend to review quite a lot of foreign, primarily Chinese, made knives. But I don't review more Chinese knives simply because I like them better or simply because I can afford them. As a matter of fact, I am particularly fond of anything and everything made in America. And that comes down to the fact that I was actually raised by the proud American-born owners of a small American manufacturing company here in Ohio. So I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that American manufacturing quite literally put food on the table when I was growing up. It put shoes on my feet, it put a roof over my head, and it sent me to college. It gave me my first job when I was 13, sweeping the metal shavings up off the shop floor. And most importantly of all, it gave me a special, intense appreciation of what we here in America are capable of making and capable of doing. The issue is, however, that Made in America comes with a price. A literal price. For example, every time I show my machinist father a new knife, I go out of my way to ask him what he would charge to make it. And the price is always an insane four-figure number, where the answer is always, I couldn't do it. At the end of the day, China can simply do so much more for less money. They do things on a massive scale, and when it comes to manufacturing, more units almost always means a lower price per unit. And that brings us to the problem. Most knives that are made here in America are impressive and gorgeous and well made. There's no question about it. There are just so many of them that are simply priced too far above my comfort zone. And the affordable options are really limited to Benchmade and Spyderco these days. And that's about it. But thankfully, a few pen and knife loving good old boys in Texas decided to throw their cowboy hat in the American-made knife ring. That's right, the folks at Tactile Turn, the Texas-based pen manufacturer, looked around at the high-end American-made knife options and thought to themselves one of two things, I'm assuming. Either there are hardly any options at all, or why is everything so expensive? And I'm proud to tell you that with this, the new Tactile Knife Co. Rockwall, they've managed to solve the expensive issue, and at once give us one more reasonably priced American-made option. And good God, what an option it is. Every single piece and every single toolpath on this titanium scaled liner lock is American. And to be more exact, it's Texan. Now, I was a very big fountain pen enthusiast before I really fell in love with knife collecting, so when I caught wind that Tactile Turn was dipping their toes in the knife game, I could not sign up for the waitlist fast enough. And that is how I managed to snag knife number 213 off the line. After this first initial release run, the knives will no longer be numbered, and that kind of makes me feel special. Size-wise, this is not really a big knife, but it's not tiny by any means. A very reasonably sized flipper. It takes up little to no pocket real estate and definitely falls within that secondary carry slot for my collection. The scales are milled titanium, sourced from America, and they've been given that tactile treatment with those milled grooves giving us a nice feeling texture in the hand. And honestly, I think it looks excellent and is something I have not seen the likes of anywhere else in my collecting. The pivot screws, which are, yes, once again machined in Texas, are also given these ringed grooves, and I think it's a good look. A little intrigue on the pivot goes a long way, especially on such a simple, minimal, and understated design. The milled titanium pocket clip is also something the likes of which I have not really ever seen on a knife. Unlike most knives where the clip is pretty much centered on the handle, here it's snuggled up against the back spine of the knife. And other than the fact that it is extremely deep carry and works really well, I think it looks great. As for the rest of the in-house machined hardware, there's very little of it. Other than those pivot screws, there are only 2 visible body screws, so 4 screws in total, 8+ on the hardware. Opened up, we're met with this slicey little piece of CTS XHP, a steel I've only ever experienced with my Spyderco swayback, and a steel I've become quite fond of. There's a nice subtle stonewash on the blade to hide scratches and marring, and I think that saber ground drop point is a great look on an EDC-oriented folder like this. All in all, the looks are very elegant and classy, but still very no-nonsense, very American-looking. I don't really know how to get that across. Maybe you'll know what I mean, maybe I sound like an insane person. Something about the looks are simply undeniably American. This wouldn't look out of place in my grandfather's pocket. And overall, the simple aesthetic, it's a win in my book. Now going back to that blade, unapologetically slicey. The blade stock was thin to start, and that flat saber grind brings it down to a foolishly thin cutting edge. And considering I've been carrying this piece 5 days a week since it arrived, it has seen any and every task imaginable that a normal EDC folder of this size would go through. And it has handled it all wonderfully. and it is still terrifyingly sharp and slicey after all of it. I have absolutely adored using this blade day to day. It's been great for the usual mail and package duty, and has been a dream on trash night breaking down the recycling. I just can't get enough of this little slicer. That saber grind and thin stock does leave us with a dainty-ish tip, so keep that in mind, but overall the blade has been a joy. The ergos have also been a joy. Going back to the simple aesthetics, visually there's not a lot going on ergonomically, outwardly. But in the hand, the nice jimping on the blade spine paired with the light texturing on the handles it's given me all the grip I need for basic daily tasks. No serious hot spots to report, although the way the clip juts out at the very back of the handle can kind of dig in just a touch in certain grips, but it's not been a deal breaker for me at all. A minor annoyance at best. We do have kind of a half-finger choil on the blade, but it's not really big enough to get all the way up there. It's a little scary. But then again, the knife being the size that it is, I haven't found myself needing to get choked up any further than I already am in a normal grip. All in all, I have no complaints as far as the ergos go. And finally, the action. Well, when it first arrived, I have to say that she was running a little stiff. But after, I shit you not, only a day or so of flipping and fidgeting, as you can see, the action smoothed out just flawlessly. This is a flipper only, and on my model here, that detent is good and stiff, and it is absolutely impossible to fail. I've tried, and I've tried, and I've tried. I physically cannot get it to fail. And because of the well-tuned detent and the fact that the blade is so light, flipping it absolutely sends that blade through the sound barrier. It goes supersonic on the open. And I have found that the flipping action just to be endlessly addicting. And on the close, because we're running on God Bless American-made bearings, it is buttery smooth. It isn't a guillotine by any means, but going back to that thin and light blade, it swings right down with almost no outside influence. Maybe the slightest shake, not shakes, just one little jolt will send it home. It's an impressive action without question, and one I have not grown tired of yet after the month or so of near endless flipping and fidgeting. Now, one side note on the action, and keep in mind that this is their first ever attempt at a knife. And this is quite literally only the 213th knife they've ever made. But I have noticed that after a few weeks of endless flipping and fidgeting, mine has developed just a hint of detent play or detent lash. When closed, putting pressure on the flipper tab allows you to kind of wiggle the blade up and down. It isn't detrimental by any means, but it's quite literally the only issue I've come across with my particular Rockwall. Lockup is still crazy solid, there's no blade play, no lock rock, just that touch of detent play, and surely something that they would remedy without question if I asked, but I feel like I'd miss this knife so much, so I might hold off on it a little bit. So at the end of the day, one more reasonably priced all-American made knife on the market, it's always going to be a great thing as far as I'm concerned. It does, however, help, though, that the knife is this exceptionally well-designed and well-made. I mean, really, I just said this, but this is their first ever knife. And this exact one is only the 213th knife they have ever produced. Ever. Let that sink in. It's amazing to me. It looks incredible, classy and clean with just a hint of flair from the milled texture on the scale. It isn't scary at all, and I wouldn't be afraid to use this knife pretty much anywhere. Library, court hearing, post office, police station, you name it. Elementary school, why not? And while being so clean and understated and unscary, it is not in the least bit lost even an ounce of usability or utilitarian function. It's still an excellent tool, and one that is yet to let me down in my day-to-day life. And best of all, this all-American beauty can be had for $299. That's it. And if you're thinking to yourself, I don't know, Tristate, that's kind of a lot of money. Listen, are you listening? They made the fucking screws themselves. If I called my dad, he's been a machinist for 40 years, and I asked him to machine me 4 custom screws, just the screws, he'd charge me more than the $300 they're charging for the whole knife just for the screws. And when you consider the materials at play here, and the machine time, and the quality, and the detail, when you consider it, the cheapest Hinderer is what? $375, $400. The cheapest Chris Reeves, what? About the same? And anything from Koenig, forget it. Anything from Holt, astronomically more expensive. This Texas labor of love might be one of the best values in all of the small batch American knife landscape today. And I, for one, I really cannot wait to see where the Tactile Bros go from here. So until next time, thank you for watching. Bye bye now.